Hello, everybody. This is Sanasta Colucci, author of Better Than a Turkish Prison, What I Learned from Life in a Religious Cult. And the link for this book is going to be in the description below, so you can purchase it if you haven't already. So, I just got done recording a 30-minute video. Everything I was wanting to say tonight. And then I realized that the microphone was off, so it's 30 minutes of silence. Oh boy. Anyway, the microphone's working now, as you can hear, and it's turned on. And I fixed the issues with the last video with the sound. After I talked about the microphone, how someone gifted it to me. And that whole story, that's going to be revealed in a future video. But basically is given to me by a podcast producer. So in a future video, I'm going to talk about that. And of course, I'll also have a link to the podcast. It's looking like it's going to be multiple parts because I just now did an interview with him, like right before the whole fiasco with the microphone. I did an interview with him, turned off my mic, went and took my dog for a walk outside, came back in to record the video, and had forgotten that I turned off the microphone. So I recorded 30 minutes of silence. Oh man, that's just great. Having a great week. I'm recording this on Friday, April 30th, 2021, so it's like the end of my work week. I'm really tired. I got my second dose of the COVID vaccine, the Moderna version. And also, I really hate talking about myself. It's tiresome. And I know it sounds strange for someone that like wrote an autobiography. Like I hate talking about myself. Um, and the first 7 chapters of my book are just like me retelling my story, and having to rehash all of these old painful memories. At times painful, but and then the last 4 chapters, it's kind of like, like the chains come off, and I get to talk about those things that I get really excited about, like history and religion and the Bible and all that stuff. But it's funny, like the first 7 chapters are the chapters that everyone says they love. So I don't know, some of those people, they probably just like to see me down. They don't like to see me get back up and like take off those chains or take the gloves off, because I come out swinging in those last 4 chapters. For those of you that have read the book, you know what I'm talking about. It's like, the first 7 chapters, everyone's just keeping me down and just being submissive and subservient, and then the last 4 chapters, I'm like, no, you all are wrong, and I'll tell you why. This is why you're wrong. So, don't like talking about myself, but I still feel like I had to make this video, which is all about me and my work history, because in future videos I'm going to be talking about work a lot, and going to be talking about things that people are going to wonder, like, who is this saying these things, and is there any credibility behind what he's saying? They still might not think that I'm a credible source or whatever, I don't care. But at least they'll know that I'm not, just some lazy communist trying to get out of work. It would be nice to never have to work again, to be honest. But obviously, I've been more than willing to work for most of my life. Yeah, I'm 37 years old, believe it or not. I know I don't look it. Another thing about me is that I have sickle cell anemia. The specific strain that I have, it's called sickle beta thal, which is short for sickle beta thalassemia anemia. My mother, who's Italian, has thalassemia, which is also called Mediterranean anemia. And my father has to have the trait because that's how it works, the sickle cell trait. If he didn't, I wouldn't have sickle cell. But because sickle cell is compatible with thalassemia, then, I can have sickle cell. The reason I usually just say sickle cell is because it comes with, all the crises that you would see in a just straight up sickle cell patient. Like, I've had multiple sickle cell crises. It's been a problem my whole life. Growing up, my hands and feet used to swell, and I'd be in a lot of pain. My mom didn't know why. It wasn't until I was 8 years old that I was diagnosed with sickle cell. And then I think it was later that they discovered it was sickle thalassemia. It was a mix of the two. So, been in and out of the hospital a lot. More times than I can count, actually. So, that's been a big factor in my life. But this is all about my work history, so I'm going to talk about that. My first job was in Bel Air, Michigan. It's up north. And it was at a resort. And I was working as a dishwasher. I'd work night shifts. And in the daytime, I would help out at the farm. Not affiliated with the 12 tribes. It was Papa Daniel's farm. My sister and I, we have different dads. Her dad, his name was Daniel, or Dan, and he had a farm up north. See, it was the summer of 2003. I had just graduated high school, and so I would take care of the children, take care of the animals during the day, and then at night I would ride my bike up this hill. The resort was at the top of the hill because it was a ski resort in the wintertime, golf in the summer. So this was summertime. I'd work all night, and then I get to ride down the hill after work, which that was the good part. But since this was northern Michigan and it was early morning when I'd get off work, it was also very cold, and I'd usually be wet from washing dishes all night. So it was cold and wet, and then had to ride home several miles on a bike. So that was my first job, my first legitimate job. I did a lot of odd jobs before that too, as a teenager. After that, I moved down to Detroit and started college at Wayne State University. I studied, I was majoring in social studies education with the goal of becoming a history teacher. So I studied anthropology, history, sociology, English, Spanish, debate, and Taekwondo, of all things. Yeah, they had a Taekwondo class there. So I learned a bit of Taekwondo, and I did that for a while. Of course, had a lot of financial problems. Nobody was helping me out, not substantially anyway. My mom was pretty poor, but she'd send what she could, like $20 every few weeks or so for food or whatever. But it wasn't, obviously, it's not enough. I got a grant for my classes and my books, and I took out a student loan. I had enough money to pay for the classes, books, the dorm room, but not enough for food. That was what got me. So there were several times I had to skip meals, and one time I had to go several days without eating, which is not good when you're anemic. So, of course, I ended up in the hospital, and that time I had a gallbladder infection to go along with it, along with the sickle cell crisis. And after that, realized that I needed to get a job. So I got the first job I could get, which was at a fast food restaurant. So I was working there and going to school at the same time, which I did not have the energy to maintain. So eventually I realized that I had to choose between either school or work. And the obvious choice at the time seemed to be work, because at least work provided, you know, money for food. Because what good is going to class if you can't eat? You know, you'll be smart but dead. How smart is that? If you can't eat, you're not very smart if you're not eating. So anyway, I dropped out of college and just worked full time for the next year. I was making $5.50 an hour. This was in 2004, 2005. The minimum wage at the time was $5.15 an hour. And it was a lot of really hard work, just having to deal with like a lot of impatient customers yelling at you all day. And then, you know, they'd be yelling at you from the front, and then your managers would be yelling at you from the back. So you got people on both sides yelling at you. I'd work the front register and drive through and help out in the kitchen. I was doing all the things. They loved me there. Well, not the impatient customers, obviously. But yeah, I ended up getting drunk for the first time when I was working there, because just stress was killing me. And I worked with a lot of Mexicans, Guatemalans too. Both. It was like Mexicans and Guatemalans. And I spoke Spanish because I had taken Spanish all through high school, took a Spanish class in college. I actually went back for one semester just for the second Spanish class. So I took up to Spanish 2 in college. And so they invited me out for some cervezas, some beer, and I had 6 beers, 6 cervezas, which is too much. Too much. That was, yeah, that's not good when you have sickle cell. I got way too drunk and ended up in a lot of pain. And this time it lasted a month. Usually it's like 8 days. 8 days is the magic number for sickle cell, because the deformed red blood cells usually die after 8 days. But what happens is a lot of times your body creates new deformed blood cells, and they take the place of the ones that are causing the problems. The problem starts because the sickle-shaped cells, they're literally shaped like sickles. They hook onto each other, and they create like clots in the blood vessels, in the capillaries, and it causes pain, obviously, but then that pain causes your body to kind of tighten up. That's your body's natural response to pain. So the blood vessels constrict, and then it creates even more pain throughout the body. Sorry about that. It's Terrence. I don't know if you can hear him. He's going in and out, playing outside with his friends. He's got a lot of friends here. It's pretty great. I'll get to that part too, where we're at now. But yeah, that sickle cell crisis lasted a month, and that actually didn't end the job. The job ended a few months later. Part of it had to do with like okay, so they had me working as a fry cook sometimes, but they didn't pay me as a fry cook. Fry cooks got paid like $8 an hour, which was a lot at the time, and I was still only making $5.50 an hour. But I still loved it. I loved it being in the back, not having to worry about, you know, customers yelling at you and stuff, being all impatient, waiting in line. Just, it's a lot of pressure working up front. So I did that for a few weeks. I was fry cook for a few weeks, and then they put me back on the front lines, and I asked if I could just stay as a fry cook, and they told me no because you speak English. Like I said, there was a lot of Spanish speaking people there, and they put those people in the back. But since I speak English, they had me working in the front, taking care of the customers. So I really didn't like that. I felt it was unfair. That was one of the reasons I quit. So after I quit, I had obviously a lot of financial problems, and that was part of why I joined the 12 tribes. And then, okay, sorry about that. My son and his friends keep going in and out the front door, so I got a bit distracted. I'm not gonna get into like the full reason I joined the 12 tribes. I've done so many interviews, I keep talking about it. Also, that's all in my book, so if you want to hear the whole story, you can purchase the book. Link is in the description below. But this video is about my work history. So what I was going to talk about is what I did for the 7.5 years that I spent in the 12 tribes, as far as the work that I did. I was mostly farming, and I also took care of children. I was a training teacher. They homeschool there, and that's what they call the homeschooling. They call it training, because you're training up these children to be like the future rulers of the universe. So that's what I did. I was training them to rule the universe. And I also worked in the restaurants. They have cafes and delis all over the place. And I helped out with a lot of the construction jobs too. After the 12 tribes, I worked at a farm in northern Michigan called Providence Farm. It's an organic farm that's like the biggest farm in Central Lake, Antrim County area. So that was fun. I like farming a lot. But then shortly before my son was born, I got a second job. And I was working night shift once again in Bel Air, just like the same town that the resort was in. So I was right back to where I had started my first job. Sorry if you can hear those kids, they're being kind of loud outside. It's great my son has so many friends now, though. So I was working nights at the grocery store, and then I would drive to Central Lake and work at the farm all morning, picking produce and weeding the gardens, stuff like that. So then did that for a few years, but it got to be too much. Just really strenuous, a lot of physical labor. And I ended up having like 4 sickle cell crises that required hospitalization within 1 year. So at that point I realized I can't keep doing this. I'm working myself to death, and I need to find something that I can do that's not so strenuous. So I went back to college, this time for bookkeeping. I went to North Central Michigan College, got a bookkeeping certificate, so I am officially a certified bookkeeper, but I am not going to do your taxes. No way. I ended up getting a job at a warehouse as a administrative assistant. So I worked in the office at a warehouse, and I worked for a company called Michael Enterprises, and they sold mostly wooden maps. They're these like 3D printed wooden maps. They're like depth maps of lakes and coastlines and stuff. They make them for all over the place, and then they sell them to those regions. They're like tourist items, so that they mostly wholesale to like retailers all over the country. That was pretty much what my job was wholesaling. I would do a few other things too, like they do quality checks where you check the map files, cross reference for any mistakes. You have to check like Google Maps, Bing Maps, uh, NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They have their own, depth maps and stuff. And then Navionics. I don't know if it's pronounced Navy or Navionics. Um, they also do depth maps. I know this is all thrilling stuff. So you look at the maps and see if there's any mistakes in the map files. We would then send the files to China. They would make the maps and then they'd send them back to us in the warehouse, and then we'd sell them. So most of what I did was like talking to the retailers, and usually I would take their orders via email, sometimes phone. I do not like talking on the phone, especially when the customers are all like cranky and complaining about something I have no control over, like company policy or whatever. I'm like, I'm sorry, it's company policy, nothing I can do about that. And a lot of people didn't like that they were made in China, so there's that too. I worked there for 4 years, and then the pandemic hit in March of 2020, and all the lockdowns happened, and so the retailers, which were obviously not essential businesses because they were selling wooden maps. I mean, if you're lost, you got Google Maps. You don't actually need a wooden map. They're obviously decorations, so they're non-essential. So they all shut down. Then the whole business just kind of shut down for a while, and I got laid off. I was unemployed for a few months, but I didn't stay unemployed. I ended up getting a cleaning job working at that same resort I had started off at like 17 years before. So I cleaned vacation rentals, scrubbing toilets, and all that stuff. I'm not sure how good of a job I did cleaning everything, but I did my best. And that was seasonal work. So it ended in the fall because in the summer they do golf, in the winter they do skiing, but the in between time when it's getting cold, everyone's back to work or school, and there's still no snow on the ground. That's, they don't really have much business during that time. So when that ended, I started looking for work elsewhere. Also, it was kind of my wife's idea to move down to, we were thinking either Battle Creek or Kalamazoo, but we thought maybe we would do it the following year. But my wife was working at a store in Central Lake. There was a lot of Trumpers or Trumpsters, I don't know how you say it. They'd come in with their red hats and no masks on, and she was trying to enforce the mask policy, and they'd be rude as hell, and she just got to a point where she couldn't take it anymore. She's like, I hate it up here, there's way too many Trumpers, we need to get out of here. So we decided, okay, the first place that we find a job is where we'll move. So ended up finding a job at Denso. I don't know if you can see my shirt clear enough. It says crafting the core. So I make heater cores at Denso, which is a factory that makes auto parts. My job is making heater cores, crafting the core. So I got hired as a temp through a temp agency. And then after working for a few months there, they hired me on full time, which doesn't mean my hours went up. They were already pretty high. It was like 50 to 60 hours a week. It just means that now I'm hired on as a full-time employee of Denso. So they're the ones writing my checks, um, not the temp agency. That was an interesting transition, though. Like, I got a job, but we were still living in Central Lake, so I would drive down to Battle Creek, Michigan, and work. I'd all week stay at a motel, and then Friday night drive up north. It's about like a 3-hour drive, 3.5 hours maybe, and then stay the weekend at Central Lake and then do it all over again. Did that for a few weeks, and then on New Year's Eve, the whole family came down here to Battle Creek, and we all stayed in a hotel room together. So we spent New Year's Eve in a hotel room, which Terrence thought was the funnest thing at the time. But we ended up staying there for 2 weeks, and then we moved into a nice townhome, which I've been enjoying, and really enjoy the city. It's way more convenient, like all the restaurants and stores and stuff. And the great thing about Battle Creek is there's like parks and walking trails. There's actually a trail that goes 26 miles. Like, it starts way outside the city, goes all the way through the city, and then ends way outside the city. But I don't know, Battle Creek gets a lot of hate. People are like, oh, it's terrible here. But I have a theory about that, because up north, everyone was always talking about how great of a place it is. Like, wouldn't change it for the world. You know, this place is great. And I think that mentality, it's like, if you refuse to acknowledge the things that are wrong with it, you're not going to change it. But if you're always criticizing it, then you're going to do what you can to make it better. You know, like, that's why they call it constructive criticism. So I wonder if maybe that's part of what led to Battle Creek being such a great town, or if it's just me. I'm just crazy for thinking Battle Creek is a great town. I don't know. Seems like a nice place to live. So far, at least. It's been a few months. I'm recording this video on April 30th, 2021. It's Friday, and it's the end of my work week. I'm really super tired. I don't know if I said it in this video or the one that the mic was off and didn't even record it. But it's really hard for me to talk about myself. Did I say that already in this video? I don't know. Yeah. I'm tired. Whew. Anyway. Cheers.